Fáilte, welcome to Spooky Stories from Youth Work Ireland. This is a very important time, Halloween. We wear masks. We put on witches' hats. We do strange things with apples. And you might be standing around a blazing bonfire. But why? What's it all about? Where has it come from, and why are we dressing up in the most amazing costumes? Let's find out. And did you know that there's a spooky story origin to why we celebrate Halloween, not just here in Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, but also America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand? But more about that later. Let's find out why we celebrate Halloween. And what does the name Halloween mean? Well, I think I'm going to have to think about this a bit. Halloween means hallow evening. What's that all about? Well, you might not know that All Hallows Day, which is the 1st of November, was a day when the people who came before us, our ancestors, honored those who had died. So, for example, if your beloved granny died earlier in the year, on the 1st of November, you would visit her grave and you'd think of her and all the wonderful ways she had maybe baked you an apple pie, or maybe she had taught you how to knit, or she was just great fun. And maybe it was your granddad, and maybe it was somebody else in your family. So it was a very special time to remember those memories of those who had died before us. In Scotland, they celebrated All Hallows Eve. In other words, the 31st of October, the day before. They got ready, they prepared, they had their apples, they had their nuts. They were deciding, oh, what amazing costume am I going to wear? And this became All Hallows Evening, All Hallows Eve, and it became All Hallows E'en. There you have it, Halloween. Now, it's an interesting time. It was known as a holy evening or a hallowed evening, and hallows, well, it refers to something holy. So if you were thinking of granny or granddad who've died during the year, you know, it's a very special memory to you, one you hold in your heart, or anybody in your family who's died. And you want to think about them and all the wonderful things they've done. So that's where the holy or the hallows bit came in. Now, the people who lived a long, long time ago before us were very clever. They were really tuned in to nature. They were tuned into all that was around them, particularly the weather. And they noticed that this was the time of the year when it was getting dark really early. And even when we wake up in the morning, sometimes it's still dark. And they noticed that there was a shift in not just the weather, but how they felt. And they were also really aware that if at this time they were thinking of those in their family who had died, that it was, well, a special time of year when you think of those who were no longer living. And the fairy people. What? Yeah, the fairy people. Really? Are there such a thing as fairies? Well, of course there are such a thing as fairies. But how do you know? Well, I will tell you how. For some of us, it might be, well, we see little sparks of white and blue and purple light, and we know, we can feel a presence, if you will, a sense of, oh, there's more people in this room than me, but in a kind of good way. And if you believe in the fairies and all those wonderful fairy stories and all those wonderful Disney movies, well, then the fairy folk would be very good to you. But if you weren't, if you were bold or naughty or not very nice person, then the fairies might be mischievous and they might play tricks on you. Do you get the idea? So people thought, what can I do to hide from the ghosts and the ghoulies, the people who've died that aren't part of my family, and maybe I don't want to see them, and the trickster fairy people? Well, they thought, do you know what? I'm just going to put a mask on so they won't even see me. They won't recognize me. Ha ha. And that is where Halloween costumes came in. You have to admit, very clever. And then they kind of thought, well, I can put on a mask. That's pretty good. But can I go one better? Maybe I could put on a skeleton costume. They'll never guess it's me. Very clever. And maybe I could have a really fancy, ooh, yeah. And then I suppose the way we are in the world, we thought, well, if I'm going to dress up my face, I might as well dress up everything else. And I'll have maybe a whole skeleton costume or a whole outfit. And that meant that there was fun, very important in Halloween. And also there was the element of hiding. So in other words, we were hiding from the ghosts and the ghoulies, but we were also dancing, playing, really enjoying ourselves at this time of year. And both are very important. Did you know, I bet you didn't, that Halloween, do you know where it started? Will you guess? In Ireland. What? Yeah, the huge Halloween celebrations all over America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere in the world began in Ireland, in County Meath to be exact. Now, there is a very special Celtic festival because our ancestors were the Celts many, many moons ago. And they realized, well, you know, the weather is so important to us because imagine living with no electricity, no hot running water. You couldn't order your pizza. Nah, imagine no phones, horror, no social media. Oh no, I can't have TikTok. So they had to be really inventive and think, what can we do? Well, they watched the weather and they noticed that the change between those lovely summer months and autumn when you could play for hours outside. It was bright nearly up until 11 o'clock. It was bright 6 o'clock in the morning. But now, it's still kind of dark, 7, half 7 in the morning, and it's getting dark in the evenings. So they celebrated Samhain. How about that? Samhain, great name, isn't it? Think of a mummy pig, a sow, when, Samhain. And Samhain means, in Irish, summer's end. Duh, doesn't that make so much sense? So at the end of summer, they thought, this is a perfect time for our new year. Now, again, you might be thinking, Karen, where are you going with this? The new year starts in January. Well, does it? For our ancestors, they recognized that we all swam around in our mum's belly for 9 months before we were born. If you think of the plants growing in the earth, they don't just sprout suddenly one day. They're growing in the earth. They're germinating for months before they actually put a little shoot up. And our Celtic ancestors, they realized, well, do you know what? Does day really begin when you wake up? Maybe it begins in the evening when you go to sleep and you dream about a fantastic next day. They realize that it's a really amazing time when you lie down to sleep and you think, tomorrow is going to be marvelous. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to meet so-and-so. So you're thinking these gorgeous, positive thoughts. And then you sleep and maybe you remember your dreams. And the next day you wake up and you have that fantastic day. So they realized, well, if you're swimming around in the dark before you're born, if the plant is in the earth before it germinates, if your day really begins in your dreams, then surely the new year must begin at winter time. when it's dark and warm and cozy and we're all sitting around inside our houses having the chat, having the crack. So that's why Samhain was their new year. And it began, surprise, surprise, around the 31st of October. Now, sometimes it was the 1st of November, 5th of November, sometimes even the 7th of November, but always in around the 31st. Because you see, this is Halloween, All Hallows Eve. So it's preparing us to have this big celebrations and great fun before we go into the month of November. And of course, in Irish Gaelic, the whole month, guess what, of November is called Samhain. So it's all called Summer's End. Now, where did the bonfires come from? That's a good question. And who was the key person? Who is the one who started all of these amazing, fun celebrations? Well, I'm going to tell you. And I bet you're going to have fun trying to pronounce her name, because it was a woman. Wait till you see this. Her name was Clochta. Look at that. Whoa. Fiery woman. Yes. Now, Clochta was a young woman, and she lived in County Meath. And whoa, there you go. Whoa. Clochta lived with her dad. Now, unfortunately, she didn't have a mum. Her mum had died, and she was an only child, and she was a little bit lonely, but you know, she loved nature. She had a dog, she had a cat, she had great friends, and she was a really wonderful young woman. And her dad was what we call a druid. Now, today, a druid might be like a counselor, a mentor. Do you know what? One of those really clued in people at Youth Work Ireland. They're all like druids. They're really special people. And they're quite wise, should we say, clever. And they kind of are really good people to go to if you're in a bit of a jam, if there's something going on, don't know who to ask. They are the ones to ask. So Clochta's dad, well, he was a bit magic, if I'm honest. He was an inventor. And he invented this thing called a Rom Ruach. Now, what is a Rom Ruach? Well, now there's a good question. Well, a Rom Ruach, again, it's Irish, was a fantastic wheel of light. Can you imagine? Think of a cartwheel. You know, when you see the horses and carts going around Dublin sometimes, and you see the big wheels on them, kind of like tractor wheels almost. But this wheel of light could fly. Pretty amazing, huh? So his name was Mag Rua. He brought his daughter. Come on, love. Hop up here, hon. We're going for a spin. And on their wheel of light, they flew to Scotland, England, Wales. Some say they flew as far as Italy on their holidays. And they began to share what they knew, their wise ways, with the people in those lands. Now you can imagine, Clochta, if you're a young one and your dad says, come on, hop up in my magic wheel. Whoa, fantastic. Maybe she thought it was like going on holidays on the plane. And Clochta herself had a very interesting name. Now, Clochta, you don't hear that name too often, but it means clock, earth, ta, spear. So what would we say is an earth spear? Well, it's a lightning bolt. Doesn't that make sense? If you've ever seen a lightning bolt, pretty, I think they're exciting, but some people think they're a bit scary. Now, there are people who think, well, if Clochta's dad, Mag Rua, had a big wheel of light, maybe he was a bit like the sun, going down early because it's wintertime and the sun doesn't shine as much. Could be. And maybe Clochta, as the lightning bolt, was, you know, the way a lightning bolt, thunder and lightning kind of shake things up. Maybe it was about telling all the people years and years ago that this was a time to wake up, be conscious. This is where we're changing things, we're shaking things up, we're honoring those who've died, and we are, dreaming in great ways of being. Yeah, I'm going to do that course. Maybe I'm going to study that. Maybe I'm going to make new friends with so and so, whatever. A new thing on TikTok. Right? So Clocta and her dad came back from their travels, and they had a lot of adventures. Some of it amazing and some of it not so good. Yeah, kind of sometimes awful things happen. But Clocta was a very clever young girl. She came all the way back to the Hill of Ward in Athboy, County Meath. And there she had her family. She had 3 sons, Durab, Kuma, and Muach. Again, you don't hear those names really these days. And they grew up to be the King of Leinster, the King of Munster, and the King of Connacht. So pretty smart guys. And to celebrate, when it was her time, when she died, her 3 sons decided, this is a really special place. We're going to have a big, massive bonfire to celebrate the mummy. Good idea. And the king, the High King of Ireland, lived at Tara. And from the Hill of Ward, they could see the Hill of Tara. And you can imagine in those days, they didn't have mobile phones. They didn't have any way, there was no internet. So how are they going to communicate with each other? And how are they going to mark the year turning from one to the other? So the new year. Now, you know the way we might have, we might have fireworks, or we might have a way of, turning the new year. Sometimes on the 1st of January, you hear the church bells going, or you see big firework displays. Well, their version was to light this massive bonfire. But they did something really a bit scary beforehand. So you can imagine no electricity, no lights, and the fire in your house was really important, because that was how you cooked your food and how you heated your house and basically how you could see each other in the dark. Everybody put out their fire, not knowing if they'd be able to light it again. And they all went to the Hill of Ward or the Hill of Tara or any of the hills around, so they could see each other long distances. So imagine you're out in Howth and you're looking at the people in Dublin City, or you're all the way off in Bray and you can see the Hill of Howth and you can see the Dublin Mountains. And then suddenly the Druids lit the massive bonfire. And this was a symbol of Clocta's lightning bolt and her dad's fire, the big sun, that big wheel of light. And everybody went, oh, great, here's the light, we'll be warm, we'll be able to cook our food, we'll be able to see. And then the High King on Tara, boom, he lit his bonfire. And then all of the surrounding hills in a great big wheel of light lit their fires. And you can imagine there was dancing, there was partying, there was fantastic food. And that was Samhain, the Celtic festival of Samhain, which of course celebrated Clocta, and came Hallow Eve, Halloween. Haha, bet you didn't know that. Now, I want to bring you back to the food. Why have apples? Do you ever have a toffee apple? Oh, gorgeous. Did you ever dunk for apples? Put it in a basin and you have to put your hands behind your back, bob your head down, apple bobbing. Or maybe your granddad tied the apple to a piece of string and you had to try and take a lump out of it. And you might think, why apples? Well, really very simple. Hey, they grow in Ireland and now is the time when they are ripe. The same with the bag of nuts. Now, we would have had, say, walnuts here, hazelnuts, but nowadays we have Brazil nuts and we have monkey nuts, which wouldn't have necessarily grown here. And very important, the turnips. Woohoo! Now, if you've ever eaten a turnip, they're pretty hard. Let me see if I can take this. They're pretty heavy. Oh, Can you imagine carving your lantern from a turnip? You'd need really good knife skills. You had to really dig in and probably have to get your man dad to do it for you. And then the Irish and Scottish people who lived here emigrated all the way to America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. And they brought the celebrations of Halloween. So again, they put on their mask, they put on their witch's hat, and they would tell their neighbors, their new neighbors in America, Australia, Canada, all about Halloween. And they realized, I don't think we have pumpkins here. Oh, I don't think we have turnips here. But we have pumpkins, much easier to carve. And that's why today their celebrations have come all the way back to Ireland, and we carve pumpkins. As you can imagine, so much easier. Some people even make pumpkin soup. You can have pumpkin lattes, much nicer. And why do the witches come in? Well, let me tell you a big secret. Some would say very spooky, but I would say actually kind of normal. So way, way back, many, many moons ago, the women who were the ones that tended the gardens, and particularly the herbs. So they were kind of like, sort of like you go to your doctor these days and they give you a tablet. Back in the day, it was the wise old woman at the end of the village, and she was usually a bit old and a bit crabby and a bit stooped. And she normally had a way of letting you know, hello, I'm the one in the village who can help you if you're sick. So she wore a hat, very nice hat, and they became known as witches' hats. And when you went to her house, she might have had a wooden spoon and she was bubbling away in this cauldron, this big black pot, all the herbs. And you know, when you went, she might have been sweeping her floor with a broomstick. You get the idea? And these women were amazing, like really clued in. But years went by, and of course, what happened was, boom, the doctor came and he kind of went, oh, I have a better way of doing this. So the poor old women took off their hats and went, oh, all right, we'll all go to the doctor instead. And what was kind of sad was the witches kind of got a bad name, and people began to not like them and to think that they were scary and evil, but they weren't. Hello, they were doing their very best. And interestingly enough, nowadays, the doctors and the pharmacists and the people in the chemist, they also use wonderful herbs. So you can get a herbal remedy, or you can have your herbal tea. So we've come all the way back to honor the witches and their amazing wisdom. And so many of us over the last year, you know, we've been going through difficult times thinking, oh, God, this is terrible. I don't know if I can do this. And we've gone out to play, to be in nature, up to Phoenix Park, have a look at the deer, to realize that, you know what, the sun shining on my face, gorgeous, really helps me. Yeah, it helps me cope with whatever's going on. And maybe when life seems a bit scary, it's time to think of the fairy kind, our ancestors, those who've gone before us. You can think, Granny, give me a dig out. And somebody might say, Granny's dead. Yeah, I know, but you know, I'm thinking she's out there somewhere. She's looking down on me. She's looking out for me. And at Halloween is the time that she's particularly there. Or it could be your granddad or your great granddad or your ma or your dad or whoever. You will know in a good way, in a nice way. So, two more exciting things. Some people would say a bit spooky, but I think they're pretty good. Something called divination. Now, there's a fancy word. But did you know that lots of games at Halloween are about guessing the future? Because remember, it is the new year. So one of them was, you take an apple and you peel it, and then you throw the peel on the ground, and the shape of it might be the letter of the name of your true love. So if any of you gals and guys out there are fancying somebody, ooh, kind of like them, I wonder if they like me. You might try that with an apple and see if their initial comes up. See, it's Connor. Yes. Oh, it's Gina. Yes. You get the idea. But also, maybe in your house, your ma or your dad or somebody makes potato, like nice fluffy potato, and they put in it colcannon, or kind of like cabbage, and then they hide a coin or little symbols in silver paper. So sometimes it might be €2 coin, a €1 coin, 5-cent coin, a 1-cent coin. Okay. And the person who gets 2 cent is going to be the rich person in the family. You get the idea. But back in the day, they used to hide maybe a rag was you're going to be poor, a coin you're going to be rich. They would hide something like little things that meant something. Maybe it was a nut, or maybe it was a sign, oh, you're really clever. If it was, you get the idea. Now you had to be careful eating your dinner because you didn't want to choke on it. And then afterwards you'd have, yay, the barnbrack, yum, yum. And in it was a ring. And if you are the one that gets the ring in the barnbrack, then you are going to find true love in your life soon. Pretty good? Yeah, I don't think that's spooky. I think that's fantastic. Yes, I got the barnbrack. Ooh, I've got the ring. And then finally, really important is the whole idea of trick or treat. Now, I have to say, trick or treat is a saying that's come from America. And this is where you dress up in your costume with your fabulous mask, and you go around the neighbors' houses and you knock on the door, and they might give you sweets. But what you're meant to do is say trick or treat, and they'll say, oh, treat, and they give you the sweets. Or they say trick, and that's when you're meant to do something like maybe a dance or a poem or whatever it is. But usually that doesn't happen. It's more kind of an American thing. But back in the day, when all of those wonderful people in Youth Work Ireland and I were young ones, nippers, we used to go, help the Halloween party. And we go around with our little bag. But you know what they used to give us? Apples, nuts. It was all, maybe a toffee apple if you were lucky, but you rarely got sweets. It was all nuts and apples, sometimes pears. Good fun. And you'd come home with your big stash, and then maybe you'd sit, and of course your ma would say, come on, here's the curly tail, here's the colcannon, here's the barnbrack, and you'd go, oh, I'm stuffed, I can't eat anything. And then maybe somebody would say, come on, we're going out to the bonfire, and you're going, oh. And then out you'd go. Maybe there was a few fireworks, which we shouldn't have down here, but we do. And of course, very important to be safe when you're around them and around the fire. Usually there's somebody like a big brother or somebody who'll take care of all the little ones. So if you're going out to have your trick-or-treating, to help the Halloween party, have fun, and know that the witches' hats were really the good owl one down the end of the road. And to know that if you see scary Halloween skeleton masks, that it wasn't to scare the living daylights out of you. It was to remember that those who we loved, who have died, we're remembering them and we're thinking of them with all those special times we shared together. But do remember, you have to be good to the fairies, because otherwise they'll be mischievous. What'll they do? They'll hide your keys. They'll hide your phone. They'll mess with your computer. No way. Well, yeah. So if I were you, I'd certainly be saying, yeah, fairies. Yeah, dead people. Hello. I know you're out there somewhere. That's okay. Not spooky at all. maybe a little bit. But that's what Halloween is all about. It's a time of fun. It's a time of, yeah, just looking at things in a different way and recognizing that the great festival of Halloween began in Ireland, in Athboy, County Meath. This amazing, fiery woman, woohoo, was the start of it all. And here today, many, many moons later, we revel, we dance, we eat foods, we dress up. Sure, we have the crack. And it's all about a happy Halloween. Ta-da!